Well, let's return to our story on COP27, the summit. And joining me live is Dr. Dino Jalal, founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, and Michael Sheldrick, co-founder and chief policy impact and government relations officer for Global Citizens. Hello to you both. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning to you, Dr. Dino. We'll start with you first. What are some of the main issues that you think that we need to address in the short term with the summits coming up?
I think there's a general feeling that the world is going in the wrong direction with so many things going wrong. There's the Ukraine war where we don't see any end in sight. There's definitely the food, energy, and finance crisis. Inflation is skyrocketing, debt is skyrocketing. A lot of people are pushed back into poverty due to the energy crisis and also food problems. Climate change remains a crisis, as we will see in the COP meeting in Egypt. That will be highlighted. And also the pandemic is really not over. And as we just saw the report in Australia that a new wave of COVID is spreading, and China remains on lockdown due to its zero COVID policies and so on. So we are facing what is called a perfect storm, and many in the developing world are feeling the crunch of it, especially the grassroots are feeling the heavy burden of dealing with all these multiple challenges.
Michael, good evening to you in New York. Dr. Dino put it so well. Unfortunately, a perfect storm with all of these crises going on. You are the co-founder of Global Citizen. Tell us about the involvement to COP27 and also the G20 Summit that Global Citizen brings.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Global citizens around the world in the lead up to these two summits have been calling on the G20, the wealthiest economies in the world, including Australia, to deliver on their promise to significantly increase financial support for the most vulnerable countries on the front lines of climate change. Currently, the G20 are $16.7 billion short in meeting this promise. And many of the most vulnerable countries are in Australia's region. So we think there's a huge opportunity for the Albanese government to build on the passage of its recent climate legislation, showcase leadership, and bring the G20 together, press them for a proactive and fully funded plan to deliver and address the needs of climate change for the most vulnerable countries. And we have no time to waste, as the world outside floods and burns and populations starve in drought-afflicted wastelands around the world. And that's why we're putting on this global town hall to provide thousands of citizens with a way to get involved and call on their world leaders to respond. We need action now.
Dr. Dino, what are some of the solutions, big and small, that we can do as a government, as we've just heard with Michael, as individuals and organisations?
Well, on these issues, the solutions is pretty clear, and everybody knows it, which is you have to ambitiously reduce the emissions. There must be bold measures on mitigation and adaptation. The question is a political will. As you know, there has been promises that the developed countries must allocate $100 billion for finance, and that has not been fulfilled. Mick just said so about the assistance that has to be provided by countries most affected by climate change in the developing world and so on. So the question is whether or not in this very difficult times for the world economy and a divided world, we can produce enough progress, enough deliveries to make a difference and to deliver the net zero world that we seek. Remember, we're running out of time. If we want to achieve net zero world by mid-century, we must reduce globally emission by about 50% in this decade alone, and we're definitely not there. The UN just submitted a report that says that the current plans will bring us only to 2.6 degrees. It's still far above the 1.5 degrees that the Paris Treaty called for.
And Michael, You mentioned before we need to take action. How important is it to have these types of events, the COP27, the G20, and are you satisfied with the amount of action once they are held?
Well, the most important thing is actually the actions taken in between these summits to deliver on the promises that's been made. Promises like addressing the global hunger and food crisis. And what we're seeing is the G20 is responding nowhere near the urgency it needs to address rapid hunger and escalating food insecurity. Almost 50 million people stand on the brink of starvation. That's almost double the population of Australia. And yet what we're seeing is whilst even in Australia, the government has increased its aid support in the recent budget, they've missed a critical opportunity to provide $150 million to support famine relief efforts in Syria, in Afghanistan, in the Horn of Africa, in Yemen. And so we're urging Australia to step up, provide this much needed support and urge the G20 to avoid putting in place trade barriers that could increase the price of food and fertilizer even more. We need this action now, and we need the community to show compassion and respond. We need people to take action.
And Dr. Dino, for the COP27, the theme is sustaining peace and development in a divided world. Can you tell us about this theme and why it is so important?
Well, for the global town hall, the key thing is getting civil societies across the world, east, west, north, south, to connect in meaningful conversations. So that's what we've been trying to do. We've been knocking on doors of countries like Ethiopia, Peru, Liberia, Bangladesh, and all these countries, and asking universities, think tanks, and CSOs to join us in open and inclusive conversations. And I think the important thing is that as we try to pursue peace and development in a very divided and even dangerous world, civil societies feel that they're being listened to. And surprisingly, in our conversations with many civil society groups around the world, they feel that they're not part of global conversations. And this is why the Global Town Hall is particularly important, because we try to facilitate these connections and conversations that will bring all of us together in addressing these perfect storm.
Absolutely. And Michael, Global Citizen is making a huge positive impact around the world. Tell us what growth you have seen and what we need to do more of. And also, we have to wrap it up shortly, so where can people watch the event online?
So we've had a record-breaking year of action taken to mark 10 years of impact. We grew from Australia, and now this is a movement around the world. I'm proud of the 30 million actions that's been taken over the last decade that's impacted over 1 billion lives. But as you said, the mission is urgent. Almost 90 million people have been pushed into poverty over the last 3 years. So if you want to get involved and people want to learn about the issues, take action, they can sign up for the Global Town Hall beginning in just a few hours' time at gth2022.com. Please join us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dino and Michael Sheldrick. Really appreciate your time and best of luck with the summits, and we look forward to hearing more. Take care.
Thank you.